Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, Earthlings on planet Earth. Hopefully take two will work. I was like 5 minutes into it and my phone just stopped recording for no random reason. I'd emptied the recycle bin. I don't have a lot of stuff on my phone. Very strange, isn't it? Voodoo. Anyway, right, what was I talking about before? Which you don't know about because it deleted. Oh yes, my earrings. Thank you all very much for commenting on my earrings. They cost €1.50 from the Chinos shop. Chinos is Spanish for Chinese, by the way, because someone before said to me, you shouldn't say racist things like Chinos. That is the Spanish word for Chinese, by the way, sugar. Right, and just before getting into talking about unusual happenings at Birkenhead and your comments on yesterday's video, because again, astonishing, and so I thought we'd cover all those things. Anybody out there who's going through chemotherapy, I know a lot of you probably already know this tip and trick, but what we've discovered in the last 24 hours with Graham, although he has been using it for a few weeks, but we really discovered this yesterday, is for anti-sickness and settling the stomach. So the hospital give him domperidone, and that has side effects of its own, and it doesn't always work. Some root ginger in his tea with honey, and today's the first day he's just said, I don't need a domperidone, which normally he would desperately need, and he's having ginger tea, and I just can't believe the difference it's made. So anybody out there who didn't know that, try that. Or anybody who's not already in the situation, but you might know somebody in the future who's suffering something like that. So I just, because no one, I didn't really know any tips or tricks before this all started happening. So for what it's worth, my daughter has been using ginger for years because she's always had a little bit of an upset stomach and she's always sworn by it, but I never knew it would be that miraculous. Right, let's get into it. The Birkenhead photographs, the red and purple coat, everybody knows what I'm talking about. Firstly, the link to the article in the OK.com. A lot of you in the UK said it's not available in my country. That is interesting. Before we get into conspiracies, I do know that here in Spain, sometimes there are articles that I can't open, and the reason is to do with GDPR data stuff and the standard of the website and whether the website adheres to things. So could be that, but of course a lot of these sorts of weird anomalies tend to happen. The internet does tend to get scrubbed, things get changed, so I don't know what to make of that. But as far as the photographs go, a lot of you have very rightly pointed out that particular photograph, there was a series of them getting into the car and leaving Birkenhead. They are available still on Google, not as many of them, but they are available on things like Quora, Reddit, stuff like that. The problem is, from a legal point of view and also from critics of our community, they would just say they've been photoshopped. The reason it was so important, it was on the Getty website, and thank you to the person who went through all the pages. Apparently it is still there, but not kind of listed. You've really got to dig for it. The reason that is because Getty is world renowned, and then it can't be photoshopped. I think Lady C was the one who pointed it out to me. It's on the Getty site. Or if it were, for example, in the Daily Mail, I know Daily Mail have their critics, but they wouldn't print something photoshopped unless they were making the point it's photoshopped. Or the Guardian, or the Independent, or the Washington Post, or any mainstreamer that it's on that website. And I couldn't find those photographs on any other website except OK.com, which apparently is not available in every country. I mean, this is the problem. Whether Meghan was pregnant or Meghan wasn't pregnant, or whether the children exist or the children don't exist, that's really not the point. The worrying thing is that people question it, that the thought has even cropped up. Most of you guys out there are ladies. Most of you have had children. I've had 2 children. There have been conspiracy theories about me, but that's never been one of them. Was Fiona really pregnant? Did she wear a moon bump? What's going on? And I think that's why the royal family normally try and be as transparent as possible. Christenings, photographs, public weddings, inviting the public, as the late Majesty said, to be seen is to be believed. And I think that's why they're so painfully aware of that. Whereas Meghan comes from this sort of privacy culture, which is, it creates a breeding ground for conspiracies. It just creates it. And oddly enough, I know a lot of you are sick of hearing about Harry and Meghan, but trust me, these rumours and conspiracy theories, they will run for hundreds of years. We still talk about conspiracy theories that happened hundreds of years ago in the royal family. We still talk about Wallis and David and what really happened. And actually, if anybody wants to know what really happened, I highly recommend you buy Lady C's book, The Queen Mother, A Life Well Lived, because I do believe that is the perfectly true, correct, and most accurate you're going to get. And it's not what you think, actually. I won't spoil it for anybody. Go and get the book, trust me. It starts out quite difficult because she is really pedantic and puts everybody's exact titles. And then as the book goes on, she shortens, more abbreviates the titles until she goes to first names. So I found that quite difficult. But what I did was, every time she used a title, I went on Google to look up the person. So I had a picture of the person in my mind. And then that really helped. And then the book just blew my mind. You would be really surprised, the story of David and Wallis. And of course, Lady C got a lot of her information from Margaret, Duchess of Argyll, who was her ex-step-mother-in-law. So horse's mouth kind of stuff, because Margaret was there for a lot of stuff. So I say that for what it's worth. That Harry and Meghan creating all this mystique and privacy and all that, they think that was just in the moment because they're living in an Instagram timeline. They don't understand royal family timeline. It goes on the record. People will talk about it for years. I touched on the Anna Anderson story yesterday. I mean, Disney even made an Anastasia thing. Ingrid Bergman, was it Ingrid Bergman, played Anna Anderson. Yes, they have found all of the remains now. But those stories and conspiracies, they will continue. This is what Harry and Meghan don't understand. They are setting those children up. I mean, apart from other problems, which a lot of you have mentioned and said, people wondering if they exist or don't exist or who their parents are, that's the least of their worries compared to what they've got coming. I think you are right. So from the Birkenhead photograph point of view, yes, I know they are out there on the internet a lot, but to get the purist, so you're not, like, you couldn't go to court and say, look, I found this on Reddit. People would say that could have been photoshopped. That's not an original source. Prince Albert Balmoral, you're quite right, all of you. I thought it was Victoria. Prince Albert changed it, designed it, because it reminded him of where he came from. I've made notes, actually, so I'm going to be going all over the place. Diana. I saw an article, and I think a few of you might enjoy this one, in People magazine yesterday. I'll try and find the link, but I mean, these things disappear off the internet, but I swear to God I saw it with my own eyes. People magazine People magazine, now weren't they the ones that published something about the 5 friends and the letter to Thomas? And People magazine has always been very supportive, very go-to. Well, I won't go into too much detail, but you can read the article for yourself. It's all about Princess Diana's clothes being auctioned off, and how Princess Diana was a style icon, not a mention of Meghan, and how Princess Diana was so relatable. She went to a party and somebody else was wearing the same dress, and she just laughed it off and said, great. And then she wore it again to another occasion, and just how lovely and relatable. And I think the dishes in Montecito might be flying if a certain person reads that article and thinks People magazine are now turning against her, because that's how I read it. Ouch. Oh yeah, somebody, I don't know if I've mentioned it in this one or if I mentioned it in the last one, but somebody said if Meghan married the entire nation, then they want a divorce. Someone else from the Commonwealth said they want a divorce. On the subject of Princess Diana, I know a lot of people who support Meghan and Harry, they seem to confuse this issue and think that Diana, if she were alive today, would be against Charles and Camilla. I personally These are just my opinions. I don't think so. Diana unfortunately died relatively shortly after a raw divorce. So that none of us, not her, not anybody, got the chance to see how things would have panned out. But I firmly believe, of what I saw of her during her life, that she supported the monarchy and she would have made it her business to help Camilla and to help Charles. And I think they would all have worked together as a family, as a modern family, as a lot of modern families do. She would have done things like being seen out with Camilla while the Queen was still alive. She would have been supportive. It is unfortunate that the timing of that it was so fresh after the divorce that happened. So I do say that for what it's worth. Now, that's when this gets a bit more gritty. The monarch and custody. I do recall at the time that when Archie was born, the newspapers, mainstream newspapers, who don't just make shit up, I know a lot of people think they do, but they don't, they said that the grandchildren of a monarch, the monarch has custody. And I seem to recall that was the case with William and Harry. I think that was one of Diana's worries. As one of you pointed out, Diana was terrified of being separated from her boys because her mum left her and it affected her. And I think that person is probably right about that. And also, when they did their Megxit thing, before that they went to Canada, as we all remember. They took Archie with them. They had Christmas with Archie. When they returned for the Megxit thing, Meghan and Harry came back together, but Archie, being really little, was left in Canada. And I believe that was a custody fear thing. They did not bring him to the UK for that reason. These are my thoughts and opinions. And I think they were thrown out of the royal family. I don't think they left to go to Hollywood. I just don't believe it. I think they were thrown out. Why keep bleating on all these years? I want an apology. I want an apology. What for? You left. You wanted. You got everything you said you wanted. Why do you need to harp on about the royal family and apology? Just move on. So I think that was the case. And I don't know if a lot of you remember that the birth certificate was amended. Now, I've got 2 kids and I didn't know birth certificates could be amended, actually. I thought once they were done, but apparently they can be amended once. And Meghan's name was taken off Archie's birth certificate as the mother. So his mother is known as the Duchess of Sussex, which is a title, not a person. And the palace said that Meghan had asked for that to happen. And Meghan's officially, I remember at the time, said no, the palace had insisted on it. So I don't know. I mean, I thought that was really weird. I hasten to add that on both my children's birth certificates, my name is completely different to Fiona Hesketh. Okay, long story, always complicated with me. But neither of my children's birth certificates have the mother listed as formerly Britain's most wanted woman, because that was a title. You know, I think that's really weird. I didn't know that a birth certificate could have a parent listed as a title and not a name. But I distinctly remember all of that. Right, moving on. Yes, a lot of you said, how could the royal family possibly trust Harry around? He might have recording devices. That's a really valid point. And to emphasise that, I'd like to remind everybody of Omid, who tweeted that the late Queen's body would be transported on the train. And then it turned out that wasn't correct. Now, where did Omid get that tip-off from? I would suggest at root source. Why did root source think that was going to be the case? Perhaps because someone like Prince William thought, let's just test out the sieve and see if it leaks. And it did. I shall leave you all with that thought for what it's worth. Somebody made comparisons about David and Harry. And yes, the difference is David was the king. He was the king before he abdicated. Harry was never the king. Harry was already, what was he, 5th in line, I think, when all this started kicking off. So quite far down the line. I mean, actually, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head Who was fifth in line when David was on the throne? I mean, it's quite far removed, isn't it? Or tell me, who was fifth in line when Victoria was on the throne? Oh, she had her eldest son, Albert. And I don't know at what stage he had children. I mean, it's quite far, isn't it? Fifth. So there are some delusions of grandeur, and I think people make the comparison because Meghan was an American divorcee. Wallis was an American divorcee. I think that the similarities end there, actually. I always kind of rather liked Wallis because she was very dignified. I mean, I've seen stuff for sale on eBay in the past years, very expensive stuff, little tiny knickknacks and things, and they interest me. You know, she interests me. I would never seek out anything that Meghan's worn or was being sold off. I just wouldn't. I'm happy to talk about her and her PR and how it goes, but I wouldn't actually spend a dime. But if somebody said to me, oh, there's an auction on eBay, for example, and I don't know, some little purse that Wallis had and it's been authenticated is up for auction, I would be interested. I might not bid on it, but I would definitely be interested. Nancy Astor, I'm interested in her as well. Jackie Kennedy, oh, I really bust out a few years ago. There was some little tiny colour negative type, you know, like the type you'd put in an old slideshow thing. There were photographs of Jackie and Kennedy here in Spain, horse riding, and Jackie was wearing a traditional Spanish outfit with the big black hat and the red jacket on. She looked fabulous. And they were going for an absolute song, and somebody got them for $30, and I didn't bother bidding, and I could kick myself for that because I'd have loved to have had them blown up and put on the wall, and I just would have loved that. I love Jackie. Right, which piece of paper was I working from? I've done Archie's birth certificate. Yeah, my mother. I was going to say, right, one of you said, can you imagine if at Birkenhead something, an object, had completely, this is Fiona's like hypothetical, and that person who made that comment, I mean, I just laughed, and I had images of Harry and Meghan looking down at the ground while this object shaped like half an egg with a couple of straps on it rolling around on the ground in front of the world press. I mean, how awful would that be? And I've often wondered if Meghan did wear sort of moon bumps, because sometimes in the morning the bump looked bigger and sometimes by the afternoon it was a lot smaller, but it could have been wind. Okay, let's just, for legal reasons, let's just say it was wind. But I wondered if she wore something to kind of bait the press into making an allegation of that nature so that she could then sue. I think that's how she thinks, because she says things sometimes, we all know what she means, but the wording is ambiguous enough to be a legal trap. That's her style. So I've often wondered if it was the case and the press just didn't fall for it and just thought, what the hell's going on? But, well, it's a lady thing, we're not going to comment on it. That is a distinct possibility in my book. And speaking of things falling to the ground, years ago my mother was at some civic function and she was in the receiving line, and the elastic went on her petticoat, and nobody noticed that was nearby but her secretary and my dad and a couple of others saw it, and they absolute fits of laughter. Her petticoat just fell straight to the ground, and this guy was talking to her, and she just bent down, picked it up and popped it in her handbag and didn't say a word about it, and the guy she was talking to never even noticed. And it just sort of, I was thinking of that, and imagine if something just went clang, plop. That would be awful, wouldn't it? Funny, but awful. And I think I've probably covered all the notes. I think I probably will do a live, because then we can all chat, because these conversations are like on a delayed reaction, aren't they? Where I do all my talking and then you guys comment, and then it takes me 24 hours and I've read the comments to then reply. And thanks to my phone deleting my first video, I can't remember if I mentioned anything about ginger being very, very settling for the stomach for people who are having chemotherapy, because that is a side effect. That's something Graham's had, and he does find that the ginger is extremely soothing, far more effective for him personally than the domperidone, which the hospital give him. And today's the first day he's just said, I don't want the domperidone, and he did have nausea, but the ginger in the tea did the trick. So if anybody out there is suffering, and yes, I did read the story about the cat eating the puke. Whoever commented that, I did find that quite funny. As always, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for all your comments yesterday. Fascinating, including the person who lives very, very near Balmoral, who's going to keep us all informed if Harry does turn up at Balmoral, because staff talk and people do get to hear things. So we'll keep an eye on that one in the comments. So as always, I look forward to hearing your free speech, thoughts and opinions below.